The rowdy reign of terror is over, and you've got a view from the On Fek Circle to enjoy it. And we're brought to you by JFtC, and we were spawned from the Jays from the Couch radio podcast. This little misadventure comes at you every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, just like our shiny new graphic tells you. 6 p.m. Eastern Time basically is Jays from the Couch time, because the Mothership podcast, hosted by our senior editor and founder, Sean Doyle, streams at you 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Mondays. There is always a assortment of guests that come on this coming Monday. Make sure you drop everything you're doing. Keegan Matheson, MLB.com, will join his friend Sean Doyle on the Jays from the Couch radio podcast this coming Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And this show, of course, streams at you on the Jays from the Couch YouTube channel, as well as the Facebook page. And you can even pick it up on the Twitter feed at Jays from Couch. A terrific part of the YouTube channel lineup is Sunny Side of the Dome. That's hosted by my friend and colleague, Karen Suter. Honestly, it is what a show about the Blue Jays should be from a fan standpoint. I mean, Karen is a fan. We all are fans, obviously, but Karen just knows how to get to the root of an issue. Look at both the positive end of it, the possible bad ramifications of it, and you don't feel it's not a homer type of situation. You don't feel like, if you're listening to me, for example, most times you might feel that, are you sure you're a Blue Jay fan? You feel part of the conversation, and make sure that you join her Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the YouTube channel. I am the Feckless Wonder, Steve Fek. Welcome to the On Fek Circle. Please note, I have a Milwaukee Brewer hat on to start the show because Rowdy Tellez is a Milwaukee Brewer. Woohoo! He's finally gone. We don't have to sit there and watch him ground out weakly to the second baseman, or, swing feebly at a pitch that he has no right pitching. All the analytics darlings that love him. Okay, David Stern in Milwaukee, big analytics guy. He grabbed Rowdy Tellez. He's figuring he's going to find lightning in a bottle twice. He basically stole Daniel Vogelback from the Jays last year, who went on to have a terrific last 6 weeks of the season. And before he just got hurt, which is what triggered this deal, he was a great lineup addition for the Brewers. I guess the Brewers feel that Tellez and all the analytics that keep saying that he's a legitimate major league, middle of the order hitter, that it's going to come true. But it's not our problem anymore. Woohoo! No more Rowdy Tellez. And even better is the return that we got. We did pick up a 6'5" minor league pitcher who, I have to admit, I have no idea who he is. His name is Bowden Francis. Big guy. He will be Rule 5 eligible, which means I guess that's why the Brewers decided to move him. They do have some quality pitching depth in their organization, so I guess they figured a guy like Francis, they can let him go, to help free up their issues come Rule 5 draft time in the offseason. He's probably a bullpen piece. I know I read some scouting reports saying that he could be a back end of the rotation guy. I mean, the Jays have a lot of those type of pitchers, but big, durable guy. Maybe you do convert him into a reliever. Maybe he's the model that Nate Pearson will follow, as far as big guy that gets converted to a leverage reliever. But that's still seasons down the road. For this year, a very valuable piece in the name of Trevor Richards has been acquired in the Rowdy Tellez purging. He throws a four-seamer. He has a really above average changeup. He does have a curveball that he can throw for strikes. He was undrafted out of college, But I saw him pitch in the Frontier League, which is an independent league, which is now affiliated with Major League Baseball. He pitched for the Gateway Grizzlies for almost 2 seasons. And I would go and see the Washington, PA team that's a little bit south of our studios here in Pittsburgh. And I was like, what is this guy doing in independent ball? This guy should be on a major league roster. And the Marlins liked what they saw. They signed him. He did really well. His first year, he pitched in Batavia, and then he pitched at Jupiter. 2017, he was the Marlins minor league pitcher of the year. And keep in mind that the Marlins had a lot of good young arms even then. Even before Jeter and his crew came in, they had a nice corral full of young arms. So he has major league stuff. He has had his moments. He had a very rough 2020. He was 3-0 with a 3.20 ERA since his trade from Tampa Bay to Milwaukee. It's important to note that he went to the Rays from the Marlins in the Nick Anderson deal, and he was a very key part for the Rays. They thought that Trevor Richards could be the type of guy that can be that swing man that can pitch, maybe the 5th, 6th, 7th innings for them. He has a good enough stop. He's not going to blow you away. I think his fastball tops out about 92, 93, but terrific pitcher. He knows what he's doing out there. And even when I was watching him in independent ball, he just stood out. You knew he knew what he was going to do. I mean, a lot like Ryu. I mean, he's not nearly the level of Hyun-Jin Ryu. Don't get me wrong. I'm not that excited about getting rid of Rowdy Tellez that I'm going to make that kind of comparison. But when Ryu pitches, he knows. You can watch it. He knows exactly what he wants to throw and where he wants to throw it. And Richards, to some degree, is that kind of pitcher. He has an idea of what he wants to do out there, and he is a Pete Walker special. The Blue Jays pitching coach excels with guys like this, bringing out innate talents just by having them trust their own stuff and their own approach, and maybe make some tinkering here. I compare it to a degree, if you want to compare it to an existing player on the team, to Steven Matz. Steven Matz was a disaster the last 2 years in New York. He came here, and again, has he been consistent? No, but he has shown flashes of brilliance, dare I say. So this is a terrific trade. Trevor Richards, Bowden, Francis for Rowdy Tellez. Woohoo! I can't help saying that enough. Rowdy Tellez, my blood pressure is going to drop. I'm going to be able to cut back on all of my heart medications. I don't have to worry about Rowdy Tellez ever coming up again and watch him fail. He was great against the Red Sox, but you don't play just the Red Sox. It was just 2 teams in the major leagues. Okay, then you keep Rowdy Tellez. But I'm sorry for the occasional spurts of excellence that he put up at the bat. He was just overwhelmed by major league pitching. Yeah, he was a 4A guy. He's better than a AAA player, but he really wasn't a major league bat. Certainly not on a team that has aspirations of making the playoffs and eventually making deep runs into the playoffs for a World Series team. So I would love to say I wish Rowdy well. I kind of don't. And I don't think it's even his fault. He seems like a nice guy. He's a great story. You're always here. Wow, what a great story, Rowdy tells. What a great story. Everybody loves to talk about how he got his name and everything. He just wasn't what all the analytics projections said he could be. That's the problem when you talk about expected stats or weighted stats. There's mathematical muscle behind some of that, but ultimately it has to come to be in an actual major league game. And I think far too often Rowdy Tellez just was never going to allow it to be. So for all you Rowdy Tellez fans, I apologize. If you want to yell at me, if you're on YouTube watching the live stream or on Facebook or Twitter, by all means, please do submit your questions. This is as much your show as it is me being the host. Okay, it is Jace from the Couch radio project, but we want to involve you. We want you to be part of the show and part of the conversation. You don't have to agree with me. I don't even care if you call me an idiot. I only ask you to explain why I'm an idiot. It shouldn't be that hard for you to figure out if you've watched enough of the On Fek Circles, but still just explain. Don't say you're an idiot and then don't follow up. Then I might go off. But basically, we want you to be part of the conversation at any point during this show, at any point during any of the Jace from the Couch family of shows. You're part of the show. We want your input. We want your questions. So I'm going to switch over to a Blue Jay hat now that I've regaled in the demise of Rowdy Tellez long enough. And I want to talk about a couple of what ifs that I think are very important for Blue Jay fans to have in the forefront of their mind as they're watching the final few months of this season, as we go into the trade deadline, even as we go into the draft. These what ifs, I think, are things that are very important to always balance things out and help you keep perspective. I'm not going to necessarily opine on these what ifs. I might not be able to help myself in some things, but it's really, these are things that are at the forefront that you really need to think about and consider as we try to see, are the Blue Jays of 2021 a playoff team? And the first what if might be hard to swallow and be hard to even consider. But what if Shohei Ohtani, who is not only going to pitch in the All-Star game, he has been voted in as a designated hitter. What if he has just an out-of-this-world All-Star game? And the Angels somehow get back into contention. And even if they don't make the playoffs, if they make a run at a wild card spot, does Shohei Ohtani become the American League MVP, despite the fact that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is having one of the finest seasons, certainly in Blue Jay history? I mean, I'm really been racking my brain trying to think of one. I know Delgado put up a crazy season, in the 2000s. I want to say it's the year 2000, but it might have been even another year that he was even better. And he had some pretty amazing years. George Bell put up some fascinating offensive numbers, but not triple crown numbers. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. very well may win the Triple Crown, and yet he may not win the MVP. It's just one of those things that, as great a season as he is having, he's going to be overshadowed by a guy that's doing something that really no one has ever done at this level. And I know Babe Ruth, and before you make any snide comments, I'm old. I did not see Babe Ruth play. I did not cover him when he came up with the Red Sox. Yes, he did pitch, and occasionally he did hit for power. And that's one of the reasons that when the Yankees bought him from the Red Sox, they made him into an everyday outfielder because his bat was just so prodigious. You didn't want to only have him bat 5 out of 7 games or 4 out of 7 games or whatever the formula was they were using back then. Ohtani is having a truly historic season. So even with Vladdy can probably able to hit for the Triple Crown and earning the Triple Crown, or at least coming really, really close, he may not win the votes for the MVP. It doesn't mean that in our hearts or in our beliefs that Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is not the American League, hands down, conversation over MVP. He has carried this Blue Jays team. And there's been some great performance. Marcus Semien, Randall Grichuk early. Certainly you look at Robbie Ray and how Stripling has turned his season around. Then Ryu, though it's been rough the last couple of starts, he's Hyunjin Ryu. Springer is back. There's all these great things that are happening with the Blue Jays. But without Vladimir Guerrero Jr. having this kind of season, and I'm sorry, no one saw this happening this year. Did we have, in our psyche, he could have a year like this? Absolutely. But to come off of what happened in 2020, even with him being embarrassed and admittedly being embarrassed for being out of shape and his approach, in that cockamamie COVID riddled season of 2020, no one expected this. There were many people that came out and said, I think he's going to have, a really big year. This is the year that he starts to show who he is. No one saw this coming. I'm sorry. As good as he is, no one saw this coming. If you're really honest with yourself, you didn't see these kind of numbers being put up. And he just might get screwed. I mean, Ted Williams hit 406 and got screwed because Joe DiMaggio was flashier. He played in New York. He was the ultimate PR product. He had cultivated that image, and he stole the MVP from Ted Williams, who had one of the best offensive seasons ever in 1941. So it's not like Vladdy would be in rarefied air here. I mean, it's happened before. And I think the real shame is that Vladdy has really done a terrific job as a first baseman. I mean, every time he stretches for a ball, I shudder a little bit because I just think groin pull, hamstring tear. Something's going to happen, God forbid. And if he gets hurt and he's out for a while, it is all over for the Blue Jays. But he has really done a nice job. Is he a finished product at first base? No, he is not. But he is far better. And I will personally eat some crow or fortune cookie or whatever in this case, because he has really made himself into a major league first baseman that can play the position every day. So that's a what if that and it really may be the biggest what if for the rest of the year. Even with trying to get into the wild card slot, trying to make the playoffs, this Vladdy Guerrero Ohtani duel for the MVP is going to be special. It's 1941, just 80 years after the great season of DiMaggio and Williams. We're going to have Ohtani and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. going down from there. Now, another what if I want to touch on is related to what happened today. Let me just for a second put on Rowdy Tellez is a Brewer. Woohoo! Okay. This would be considered not really a major or a blockbuster deal. It's a solid deal. It's the second deal in a row that really the Blue Jays came out ahead on. I mean, they got Dickerson and Simber. Even with Dickerson being on the DL, he fits right in because most Blue Jays end up on the DL at some point. So he's a perfect Blue Jay. And now they get Trevor Richards, who can start if he had to in a pinch, I would say still. But he can fill 5th, 5th, 6th, 7th innings. He can be that bridge leverage reliever that the Blue Jays desperately need. So a very valuable addition. 2 very solid baseball trades, but certainly not earth-shattering. It's not trading for Max Scherzer or Herman Marquez or Berrios of Minnesota. Okay, or back when the Blue Jays traded for David Price or they traded away Josh Donaldson. It's not that kind of deal. But let's say there were no more deals the rest of the way, other than minor tinkerings. Are you okay with that? What if Ross Atkins in the front office does not make the big splash? Do you feel good about the Blue Jays making the playoffs? I think we all would begrudgingly say, though I've said this all year, the Blue Jays are not going to win the division. But they are still alive. They are still in contention for a wild card spot. It's a little early to be looking at wild card standings. But, shows like this have to talk about stuff like that because that's what you guys are talking about. So are you okay with that? What if the Blue Jays do not make a big blockbuster deal? Are you okay with that? My only concern is I think it sends a signal to the players that you're not ready yet. And I know that, and there's all kind of debate. I know, like with the Astros, the year before they won the World Series, or back, stole signs on route to winning the World Series, that the front office let them down. They didn't make the big moves. They just did little tinkerings just to kind of keep them, in contention. And there was a lot of grousing, in the clubhouse. I don't know that this team would grouse about not any big blockbuster moves. A lot of these guys have come up through the minors together. And then you've got the veterans that have been added through free agency. But my concern is it confirms something, at least in my mind and in many people's minds, that the front office, Ross Atkins and the front office, is going to have a hard time trading away their prospects. If you want to combine the Shapiro-Atkins presence in Cleveland, that was the big knock on them too. They had these prospects. They would not trade them. Even when they were winning a division or in contention for a wild card spot, they wouldn't move their cherished prospects. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm reading into something when I say this, but Ben Cherington, who was the farm director here in Toronto before he took the job with the Pirates, he worked with Shapiro and Atkins in Cleveland. On his weekly radio show, he was talking about how much fun it is for the draft because you're adding players, and you're seeing these guys grow up. But it becomes very, very hard to then trade those players because you have so much emotionally invested. Even though you try to be professional, it's almost like they're your children. And the quote that I found very interesting was that Ben Cherington said, speaking with some of my closest colleagues, they are struggling with that very dilemma of getting rid of their prospects, the people, their children, their baseball children, if you will. It's harder for them to pull the trigger on a deal like that. And when you have a system as deep as the Blue Jays system is already before the upcoming amateur draft next week, those are the pieces that you have to let go of if you're trying to make a big splash in the trade market and add a big time starter or a big time bullpen arm or a third baseman. Or, again, their lineup is so awesome. It's hard to say, well, you need to trade for offense. They probably, if they make a big addition, honest to God, I swear to God, they're not going to get a pitcher. They're going to keep piecemealing the pitchers, and they're going to add another second baseman or another outfielder that they don't need because they've got plenty. I think that's where the splash is going to come, and then they'll figure it. Well, in the offseason, it'll sort itself out, and we can make a deal or whatever. But it's just something to think of. That's another what if. What if the front office is hesitant? I'm not going to say afraid, but hesitant to let their big ticket items go. It's something to think about as we head into the trade deadline, as we head into a playoff race, ideally, not only in late July, but August and September as well. Those are just some what ifs to think about. I actually had another what if, and I have to admit, I'm hesitant. I chickened out. I wanted to talk about what if the Blue Jays are allowed to play in Toronto come last week of July, first week of August. And it turns out to be either a distraction or actually a home field disadvantage. And don't get me wrong, the Rogers Center is terrific. And this is where the Blue Jays should be playing. But the reality is there's already been one move. That would be another move. We saw what happened with the fallout in the Stanley Cup Finals, where families and low-level team officials were not allowed to cross the border to join the team to see if they were going to sweep the Canadians and clinch there in Montreal. I think that there's going to be some very stringent ties into a Blue Jays being allowed to play in Toronto. And it's not so much the Blue Jays even having to make adjustment. The visiting teams don't want to have to go through a 2020 type of lockdown again. And I cannot imagine that the union is going to stand idly by and say, no, it's not fair that we're doing this, to the players, that the players have to stay in their hotel and they're under strict COVID guidelines and they can't bring their families and whatever it is. And these are the visiting teams. So it's a major league issue, not just Toronto centric. Of course, the Blue Jays in their hearts want to play in Toronto, even if they're not playing in front of large crowds or any crowds at all. But I don't know. I mean, that's a big what if. Do you really want to see the Blue Jays potentially mess up the chemistry that's going on and the magic they've had at Dunedin in Buffalo? Do you want to risk that in a pennant race, or do you want to wait until the playoffs like they did in the NHL and then open it up? Talk about a home field advantage. Now you're playing teams that have not played in the Rogers Center for more than 2 years. That becomes a home field advantage. But, okay, so I snuck it in anyway. And I'm the American outpost for Jays from the Couch. I understand it seems like it's self-serving and selfish of me because I get to go see the Blue Jays in Buffalo when my schedule allows. I just wonder what the ramifications of it would be. Well, it's time for Blue Jays Way, and we always talk about something about Blue Jays history or Blue Jays culture, and it's something that kind of ties into this year's team to a degree. But this week in Blue Jays history, July 8th, 2000, Jose Cruz Jr., yes, yet another son of a former major leaguer playing for the Blue Jays, hit his 20th homer of the year. And that made the Toronto Blue Jays the first team in Major League history to have 4 players hit 20 or more home runs before the All-Star break. Tony Bautista, Carlos Delgado, Raul Mondesi, and Jose